Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation. So for all you Audie fans, he is currently in on my bed, sound asleep, on the Boston Red Sox sweatshirt Colleen sent me for Christmas. So I wore that sweatshirt when I did the video that I released on Christmas Day, and it was warmer that day than it is today. So as soon as I was through filming the video, sweatshirt went off. I set it on the bed and went off for some other purpose. Doesn't matter. Point is, I was only gone about 30 seconds. Go back in to put the sweatshirt away. Well, a cat was sleeping on it. Apparently, Audie found the sweatshirt, recognized it, I'll get to that in a moment, and said, oh yeah, I remember this, this is mine. Curled up, went to sleep on it. So, what did he recognize it from? When I first opened Colleen's box, she puts in cat toys for Audie, and she usually leaves them right on the top of the box. So I open the box, bang, cat toy right away. So Audie crawls into the box in order to get the cat toys, or I don't know if he wants to eat with them, play with them, or sleep with them, but he certainly does want to snuggle into those boxes and make them his own, which is what he did. So he had already been asleep on that sweatshirt, and it had been his before I ever even put it on. He was just like, nope, mine. And she also packed some other nice, warm, squishy stuff in there, and I will show you that, but not this video. I'll probably do that tomorrow. Mostly because I can't even get to the sweatshirt now because Cat's sleeping on it. So I thought to myself, okay, he's on the sweatshirt. No big deal. He can't stay there forever. Eventually he'll get up. I'll just run in, grab the sweatshirt. Yeah, but I didn't. He had gotten up a couple of times, but when he got up, it didn't occur to me to go run in and grab the sweatshirt. So by the time I got ready to go to bed, there's the cat sleeping on the sweatshirt on my bed. So yes, I went to sleep in a bed with a sweatshirt on top of it and a cat on top of the sweatshirt. And that's a little unsettling to think about. It's like you don't go sleeping in your bed when there are clothes all over it. Although, frankly, I do sleep in my bed when there are cats all over it, so I guess there's not much difference. So I get up this morning, and of course the sweatshirt is still on the bed, the cat is still on the sweatshirt, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, we'll get up, we'll do what we need to do, and the cat will eventually get up, I will get the sweatshirt. No. I had it in my head that I was going to go in, get that sweatshirt, and I did make a beeline in there. Of course, he was right in there with me, hops on the sweatshirt, and it's like, no, not going anywhere. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to trick him into abandoning the sweatshirt long enough for me to take it, steal it, bring it somewhere else. I don't think he's going to be happy about this, but what can I say? It has to be done. So that's what's going on with Audie. Now, my odds of getting him off that sweatshirt today are very, very tiny because we are expecting a snowstorm this afternoon, meaning Audie is probably not even going to wake up, never mind get off the sweatshirt, get off the bed. So I think we may end up sleeping in a bed with a sweatshirt and a cat on top of it again tonight. Who knows? I will keep you posted. All right, we're going to take a quick break for the intro and we'll be right back. So, I have been taking a look at the situation with grocery prices, not just locally in my area, but throughout the United States and globally. All right, now I have to put a little asterisk on globally. I have not checked out what's going on in Australia yet. And there's a reason for that. Australia tends not to be hit as hard with food inflation as the rest of the world is, because they have a lot of farmland. It is a country that is not only capable of feeding its own population and doing so well, but shipping food to the rest of the world. So, no, I do need to take a look and see what's going on in Australia, because although I never expect to see food shortages in Australia, inflation, maybe we will be seeing that. So when I speak about the rest of the world, yep, my Aussie friends, I am not talking about you, because I have not looked at what's going on down under recently, although I will. So, we're all facing problems with rising costs. And I actually looked up the stats. And here in the US, they are estimating that food prices since 2020 have gone up between 25 and 30%. And that is just an average. In some areas, food costs are going to go higher. In some areas, not quite as high. It all depends on whether or not the food needs to be trucked into you, or if you have a lot of farmland in your area. Some places, here in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of dairy farming, so we might not see the massive hikes in dairy, but we may be seeing massive hikes in beef. Okay, do you want to say hi? Well, I guess he heard that I was making a video, so he's come out to say hello. But we may see massive hikes in beef. On the other hand, places like California, where although they have a lot of produce growing there, dairy farming isn't quite as big. So these are just estimates, because big country, lots of different circumstances. Still, 5 years, a 25 to 30% price hike, this is going to be a major problem for people. So I was asking myself, is this what I'm seeing at the store? Because I have not been aware of it. And, you know, it's like that old story about you don't throw a frog in a pot of boiling water. If you do, they'll jump out. You throw a frog in a pot of cold water and gradually bring it up to boiling. Well, maybe that's what I've been looking at the last 5 years. Because what I did instead was I went through my last month's worth of grocery shopping. And I can do that easily. I just pull up my bank records and see what I have spent at my local stores. And yeah, it has not just been a 25 to 30% jump in my grocery spending. I found it closer to 40%, possibly even higher of an increase. Now, to be fair, this is spending between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which are the times of year when one tends to spend more anyway on groceries, because we are doing cooking things and, you know, even little things like baking cookies to pass around to the neighbors. But yes, I understand this is a more expensive time of year, but it was the time of year that was upon me, so the time of year I was dealing with. And also, there's just me and this little guy, so I shouldn't be really seeing a lot of increases. But I was. So then I started to ask myself, well, one, how did this sneak under the radar? Well, yeah, frog in the pot of cold water, gradually bringing it up to boil, sure, that's going to be part of it. Gradual increases. I remember in 2021, 2022, I was aware of the price increases in the grocery store. I would look at something and say, wow, apples are $2.49 a pound. That seems pretty high to me. I can remember going in here and seeing apples at $1.49, $1.89, and thinking that was a little more normal, a little more what I was used to. So yeah, that quiet desensitization over time was part of it. The fact is, there was also a certain amount of laziness and negligence on my part. I was simply going into the stores, buying the things I had always purchased, and not paying a lot of attention to how much I was spending on them. So, another oops, sort of asleep at the switch. But I think habit is a big part of it too. When I went in, I was buying the things I always bought. And because I was always buying the same things, the same foods I always bought. Now, obviously, there would be, I have cat hair everywhere now. Obviously, there was a certain amount of variation in the things I was buying. But in general, I was habit buying a lot of things. And as a consequence, the habit was telling me, buy this, check it out, go home. Not, buy this, check the price, check it out and go home. No. So certainly some of that. But I do think that it's starting to hit a point where we should talk about this, because it's getting to be a big issue for a lot of people. And I am not happy with the amount I am spending on groceries. Now, in my case, I am fortunate. There's just me and the cat. It's not like I'm trying to feed a whole family. If I were, this would be less academic. It would be, much more like a survival level issue. But for me, it's a question of, how did this happen? How did this sneak up? Why is it that I am spending so much more now than I was just a few years ago? I didn't notice it. I wasn't paying attention. And what can I do to fix this? Because that's not okay. So that's what I thought we would take a look at. Is your grocery bill getting out of hand? Because mine is. And it's not as if this is impoverishing me, like I cannot afford to feed myself. I just don't like how much I'm spending. I think for one person and one cat, I am spending too much money. So I need to look at that and rein it in a little. And there are a lot of ways to reduce your spending. You can buy the very same items you've always bought. Just price shop, buy different brands. So if you are accustomed to going into the store and buying, a name brand lunch meat, for example, you can probably save money by going over and buying the store brand lunch meat. Although, you're not going to save that much money. And that's just a fact. Generally speaking, the store brands will position themselves so they are a little less than the name brands. Not always, but usually that's their goal, to drive more shopping over to their brands. But are they going to be significantly less expensive? No, they don't have to be. A very small price difference between the store brand and the major brand is more than enough to secure them the business they need. They don't have to go down to rock bottom. And of course, they're in business to make money. So if they don't have to give you a greater discount, they're not going to. So that is one way that you can easily cut down on spending. But what happens if you're already buying the store brand? Oh, well, that one's not going to work. So you may have to look at things like changing the way you shop, changing the things you buy. For most of us, that can be pretty difficult because most of us have become accustomed to eating food. And when we're eating food, it means buying food at the store, taking it home, preparing it, and there's a whole process involved in that. In a certain way, for usually at our age, a very long period of time, meaning these are habits that are going to be tough nuts to crack. But we can do it. So, what is involved in this? Let us say, for example, that you are an Italian American, and ever since you can remember, you sit down at your dinner table and you got the noodles and gravy on your plate, right? And for the rest of the world, that is pasta with a tomato sauce. But in the Italian American communities, it's so ubiquitous, it's just, the noodles and gravy. I can remember, as a small child, I grew up in Boston, and we did have a sizable Italian American community. I did not know what a colander was. I always referred to a colander as a school of pasta, which just basically means, as far as I can remember, a long time ago, drain the pasta. I didn't even know it had an English name. I just thought, you put your spaghetti in here and you go. So we all have situations like this because we all grew up eating a certain way. Sometimes as young adults, we would go off, we would marry, start a family, and we might make our own changes on that. We might do so because our spouse brought in their family dietary preferences. But in general, most of us end up, it's almost like we set our food consumption patterns in stone when we were in our 20s and 30s. And even though we're no longer in our 20s and 30s and no longer have that same lifestyle, we still tend to be eating the same way. When I was a young person working in the city, I would not bring my lunch into work. I probably should have, but I didn't. I would simply have lunch at a deli. So for me, lunch, even now, is a sandwich. That's what I think of when I think of lunch. Should it be? Do I have to do this? No. Lunch can be anything I want it to be, but in my head, it's still that sandwich. And very much like a deli sandwich, I'm surprised I'm not wrapping it in wax paper. But it's because that's an old habit that I never really examined and never really sought to break. But now that I am looking at cutting back on the amount I spend on groceries every week, everything is on the table. Oh, cute pun. All right, everything is on the table figuratively as well as literally, because there's nothing I'm not willing to look at. Can I break away from my traditional long-held patterns, eating food, eating meals the way my mother prepared them when I was young, the way I prepared them when I was a young adult? Can I do this? Of course I can. Is it going to be easy? Maybe not. But am I willing to do it? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, I am. Because I strongly suspect that the inflation we've seen in the last 5 years is just a taste of what is to come. Because we are not seeing anything in the economy that suggests this is going to break and turn in the other direction. In fact, everything I'm seeing in the economy suggests that we may be in for this sort of roller coaster inflationary cycle for a while longer. So, what does this mean in real terms? Well, I looked at my grocery shopping and I had to ask myself, where are the high-priced problem areas in my grocery shopping? Are there things I can eliminate? Am I buying a lot of pre-prepared or pre-packaged foods. And the truth is, I'm not. I will give myself a little pat on the back, a very small one, because that's not a major problem for me. Am I completely free of pre-packaged, pre-made foods? Absolutely not. Not even close. There are many things that I am buying in the stores that I probably shouldn't be buying. Where they catch me is in the baked goods section. I do not make my own bread. I do not. By the way, that's not happening anytime soon. I have tried making bread before. I am not a particularly skilled baker. I may have many talents. Well, enough talents. But bread baking is not among them. I am not a skilled baker. So, bread products. No, I'm not making my own bread. Am I willing to walk away from the fancy breads in the fancier, specialty bread section, the artisanal bread section of the store, in favor of going over and grabbing the loaf of Wonder Bread? No, not doing that. I'm going to have to deal with this in some other way, because my solution will not be Wonder Bread. My solution may end up being that I just need to find a local bakery, go out, buy bread baked by a legitimate baker who knows what they're doing and who won't be poisoning me, because in fact I might well be poisoning myself if I give that a try at home. So maybe that's going to be the solution. But in terms of that pre-packaged stuff, bread is my biggest. And when I say bread, I'm not just talking about those artisanal loaves of brioche I'm bringing home. But I will go into the store and I will see a pan of cornbread. It's like, oh, I love cornbread. We got to bring that home with me. Well, maybe we don't. Maybe we don't. So that's what I can look at in the immediate future. A little more long-term, which is to say 2 or 3 weeks, find a bakery, see if that's going to work for me. Maybe I can do that. But am I prepared to fill my cabinets with nothing but, flour and baking soda and eggs and start cooking everything from scratch? No. I need to be realistic. That part is not happening. So what are the other prepackaged foods? Well, I will occasionally just buy convenience foods. I will go in and say, oh, look, frozen ravioli. I like ravioli, and the frozen ravioli, which is okay, and we're not talking fine cuisine here. We're talking frozen ravioli. But it's convenient, and so I will go into the store and buy it. That is something I can change. And when I start looking at how much I am paying for things like frozen pasta or more convenience items like pastaroni, where it's a little box with, a scant handful of pasta and a little pre-mixed sauce thing. But I still have to put milk and butter in with that too, so I'm not making out as well as I think I am. And it's many, many times the cost of going out, getting myself a 1-pound box of pasta. In fact, that little, 1 or 2 serving pastaroni will often cost more than that entire 1-pound box of pasta. Bring that home. I can make a sauce. That is definitely within my culinary repertoire. I can make a sauce for that. So that's where I can make a change. I can stop buying these pre-mixed convenience foods, the pastaroni, the rice-a-roni, whatever. That can go. Is that going to make a massive change? No. No, it is not. Mostly because these items cost less than $2 a box. On the other hand, it will have a cumulative total. The things that I am probably not able to deal with are things like meat and fish. I don't have a lot of meat in my diet, which is fortunate for me on one hand because a fish-based diet is going to leave you healthier, but also a fish-based diet in general is more expensive. Am I willing to cut costs on that? Absolutely not. That's one that stays. I'm going to have to work around that. I'm going to have to take that into consideration. Things like eggs, however, when I was at my local grocery store and I grabbed a dozen eggs, the eggs I was grabbing, the ones I bought, by the way, were $3.99 a dozen. That was the price. These are large brown eggs, $3.99 a dozen. The eggs next to them were $4.99 for large brown eggs from a different brand. When I go to Aldi's, the eggs are usually even less, about half the price. They're ordinarily somewhere in the range of $2, and those are not brown eggs, those are white eggs, but my goodness, I'm not going to be picky about that sort of thing. So I need to start buying my eggs at Aldi's. I do go through enough eggs on a regular basis to make cutting that cost in half well worthwhile. And I go to Aldi's once a week anyway. That's where I need to get my eggs. And I just need to make sure I'm doing it so that I don't find myself, like today, going into the weekend with no eggs and therefore having to buy them at another store at twice the price. So there is a certain amount of planning involved. But can I do this? Yes. I suspect also, oh, by the way, I'm going to hear about this in the comments. I know I am. Be kind. The soda. That is something I can eliminate from the grocery bill. And that will cut the grocery bill a lot. Because soda is expensive. It really is. Am I going to die if I don't have my soda? No. So I need to look at cutting some of that. If I were going to put a number on it, I would say I am going to cut that back by at least 50%, hopefully more. But am I going to go crazy if I can only cut it back by 50%? No, because I am going to cut it back. And if I can cut it back by 50% this month, I can probably cut it back by another 20% next month, and so on and so forth, until eventually it goes away. That would be nice. So when I look at this, there are ways I can save. And most of them do not involve taking things that I am accustomed to eating out of my diet. It just involves replacing them with other things, doing it in other ways. Instead of the packaged pasta, I will make my own. I can boil water. Yeah, really I can. I can boil water. I can make a spaghetti sauce. I can do this. It's not out of the sphere of my skill and experience to do this. Can I bake my own bread? No, I can't do that. Can't do that. Nope. So I have to fix that one another way. Am I going to need to fix that? Yes, I am. Because when I started looking at what I was paying for baked goods, bread and bread-like products, it's high. It is really, really high. But, in fact, I am not willing to go over to the generic Wonder Bread alternative. I'm not going to do that. Mostly because I just don't... Oh, gosh. I'm sorry. Nothing against Wonder Bread. I grew up on that stuff. But by the time I became an adult, I realized that was nothing but empty calories. There's no nutrition in it. And in fact, did you ever do this when you were a kid? I would take a slice of bread, scrunch it up in my hands. We all did this, I'm sure. And I would end up with a little tiny peanut-sized bit of bread at the end. Wonder Bread is mostly air. Remember that whole batter whipped? No, that was Sunbeam. Same thing. Sunbeam bread, batter whipped, same thing. They would both scrunch down into the size of a peanut in your hand. No, I need to find another alternative. Am I going to give up fish? No, I am not. Would I trade fish for meat? No, I wouldn't like that. I don't like meat enough to do that. I prefer fish. So beef, pork, they are not calling to me when I go into the supermarket. But certainly, I'm going to have to take into consideration that fish is going to be more expensive. Prepare for that. But I should be able to economize in other ways. Am I willing to economize on fresh fruits and vegetables? Probably not. And I have to be honest about that. Maybe at the end of the day, what I will find out. Oh, and I'll keep you up to date on this because you know you are my favorite therapist. When I have problems, you are the ones I go to. So I will keep you abreast of this. Maybe the only thing I will be able to do is eliminate the prepackaged, pre-processed foods, the junk, and possibly find some healthy alternatives to the baked goods I'm currently buying at the grocery store. Maybe find something that isn't quite as sugary and is a little more nutritious because, I'm still going to want that sandwich every now and then. Maybe that's where it's going to go. So I would have to say, what's the takeaway here? Well, I want to open up the discussion. I want to start talking about grocery prices. I want us to be able to look at this realistically and clinically. We need to be cold and hard about this, because if grocery prices continue to rise, those of us who are living on fixed incomes could be facing serious problems. We already know that in Europe, because energy prices are going through the roof, by the way, that is the Russian-Ukraine thing, and that gas that had been coming through the Russian pipelines, apparently that's not there anymore. So our European friends are going to be cold this winter just as they were last winter. That's a serious problem. People will be choosing between eating and heating once again. Just because we're not facing things to that extent in the U.S., and I don't imagine that's an issue in Australia either. But again, I'm going to look that one up. I want to make sure that I am dealing accurately with what's going on there. But Australia is growing plenty of food. So fingers crossed they're going to be okay. The fact is, very few of us are going to be okay if things keep going the way they're going. And it would behoove us to start making changes now before we hit the point where we might really be up against the wall and have no choice. If we have the ability to transition into a more manageable grocery bill gradually, now we should do it. So, throwing that out for you, I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think? What ways do you think would be valuable for us to consider as we start economizing? Because, like I say, I think eventually we're not going to have a choice. And as usual, whenever you are eventually going to be forced to do something, it's always better to start by doing it voluntarily so you can control the process on your own terms. So that's what I have for you today. And yeah, I know it is not particularly good news, but again, I'm sure you're all seeing the same things I'm seeing. This is the information that's out there. You're shopping at the stores too. If I'm noticing the jump in my food budget, you're noticing it in yours. So let's see if our collective wisdom can help our community weather this storm. All right, thanks so much for being with us. I hope to see you next time. Meanwhile, we are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out, and have a terrific day.